I played 3 years at the D1 level at NC State University, then later played 7 years of professional baseball between the St. Louis Cardinals and San Diego Padres. Even got the opportunity to play in one World Baseball Classic representing Colombia. So when I say what it takes to get recruited, I've literally seen it from every single angle. Today, I'm walking through the 23 real steps to get recruited. No fluff, just what works. Now, before we get started, make sure to go down below in the description to download my free email template. It is exactly what your son needs to start reaching out to these baseball coaches the right way. All right, so in this video, I'm gonna go over the 23 steps to get recruited, and I've divided it into a couple of sections. Number one, getting your mindset right, getting your tools right, building your exposure to these college coaches. Next up, building the relationships with these college coaches. And last but not least, playing the long game. So let's get into it. Let's get our mindset right. So step number one, set a clear goal for yourself. What is the goal for baseball for you? And think very, very high level. Don't think nitty gritty. Hey, I want to hit 400. Who really cares about that, right? Let's talk about a big goal for ourselves. Make sure that we clearly define and make sure that that's also a SMART goal. A SMART goal, of course, is specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's relevant. And it's also time bound, guys. Making sure that we have that big goal in place is going to be huge. Ultimately, do we want to play at the D1 level? Do you think that we might have to go down the D3 or JUCO route or NAIA? There's obviously many different routes to be able to get to play college baseball. So make sure step number one, we clearly define what our goals are. Next up, we want to start adapting a growth mindset. And a lot of people might not understand what a growth mindset really even is. And you don't have to necessarily be the best, but ultimately we always want to have that mindset of growing into becoming something better. So it doesn't matter if you hit 400 or 700, we ultimately always want to be growing. We always want to be getting better. It doesn't matter if we're the best kid on the team or the best player in our region or even in the state. We always need to be getting better. And that's something that I've been able to see rubbing shoulders alongside some of the greatest players in the world. Think Yadier Molina, Nolan Arenado, Goldschmidt, Tatis, Machado. These all are guys that ultimately are always driven to become better than what they were yesterday. And just because they have a platinum glove or a silver slugger, or if they were the rookie of the year, it doesn't really matter. They always are trying to elevate their skills and play at that next level because they understand the abilities that they have, and they ultimately never want to settle and just flatline for the rest of their career. They're always trying to grow. They're always trying to get better. So that growth mindset, we always are trying to get better. It doesn't matter where we are currently or where our feet are. We are always trying to get better. Number three, understand the odds. Guys, when we understand the odds, this is when we start putting ourselves in better situations and better environments to grow. The odds to play college baseball is around 7% of all high school baseball players will play at any level of college baseball. And even less, around like 2% will actually play at that D1 level. So understanding these odds, honestly, could motivate you or demotivate you depending on the competitor that you are. So don't let them scare you. Obviously, these stats, these metrics, these possibilities and probabilities of playing at that next level, because if you want it, you can go get it at the end of the day. Next up, step number four, take ownership early. And what I mean by that is your parents should not be the one that is taking ownership of your journey, of your career. You have to be the one to have that drive to want to be better. And if it's coming from your parents, there's nothing wrong with that because your parents are always going to want the best for you. But at the end of the day, the drive has to be coming from the player no matter what. This isn't a parent's job to take that ownership or to have that drive for the player. It is your responsibility at the end of the day as a player to own your journey. All right, step number five, we want to build out a routine earlier than later, because these routines that we're building out, let's just say if it's in middle school or in high school, they compound over another. And I just got finished reading a pretty good book, The Compounding Effect. And the idea of it is what we do today is going to compound to the next day and then to the next day and to the next day. And this is what ultimately a routine is. We're building off of each other, the growth that we've been able to establish from the previous day, and we keep doing that through the consistent hard work. And a lot of times I speak to a lot of high school players and family members, and ideally the consistency through a structured program is the number one thing that is lacking in the overall development. And everyone's situation is a little bit different, but I will say it's the consistency that's ultimately the most important factor at the end of the day. All right, so next section, getting your tools right. So this is where we really want to start off with step number 6. We want to track our measurables, and our measurables, our metrics. It's our 60-yard dash time, it's our 5-10-5, it's our throwing velocity, it's our exit velocity. These are all things that ultimately matter a ton when speaking to these college coaches, and they're very specific, right? 60-yard dash, we're not talking about 40-yard dash, we're not talking about a 30-yard dash, we're talking about the 60-yard dash. It's something that's a lot more relevant to baseball for whatever reason. It's just our metric that we keep track of. As far as our arm velocity, obviously that's usually off the mound, but if we're not a pitcher, it's across the diamond or from the outfield if you're an outfielder. Also, our pop time, if we're a catcher, these are all things that ultimately matter a ton. So it's important to understand your numbers and where you're at currently. And it's also important to update them when reaching out to these college coaches, which I'll hit on here in a second. But at the end of the day, it is very important to make sure that we're tracking these metrics. We're tracking these measurables, because if we never track them, we never collect the data, it's very hard to improve something on something that we never even keep track of, or we don't even know where our baselines are. So it's really important to know your numbers. Next up, we want to train with intent. And what do I mean by this? Well, you can obviously just go through the motions of doing, sit-ups, push-ups, all that fun stuff. But at the end of the day, that is not with super high intent. We want to make sure that the intent not only behind each rep is solid, which obviously should be always the case. It doesn't matter if you're doing push-ups or sit-ups, but also the intent of the programming. And that's where ideally I see it so many times. You're just doing a program, which isn't necessarily designed specifically for you or designed specifically for baseball players. So this is where you can get strong, but you want to ultimately get baseball strong. Baseball, requires a lot more different and unique movements as far as our rotational strength and our explosiveness that maybe football doesn't. And ideally, the way that I like to put it is, if we want to train like a gymnast, that's cool, but can we really expect that that training regimen is actually going to produce results for being a baseball player out there on the diamond? So that's where we want to really make sure that we have that good intent, where we're not just getting reps in, but we're doing the right things as far as how it translates over to the baseball field in our swing, our throw, our fielding mechanics, all that fun stuff. All right, next up, we want to film our progress. Progress isn't real if it's not recorded. So this is where ideally we want to record our progress and create a database. And what I mean by this is ultimately it's just a simple folder on your phone. You can create a folder, an album of videos of you hitting in the cage, of you running your 60-yard dash time, of you doing your 5-10-5s, your pull downs, things like this. The more we're ultimately able to produce videos to prove what our metrics are, it's only going to be easier in the long run when we're emailing these college coaches. So start early and often with creating videos, creating highlight videos, or just ultimately creating a bank of videos that you have created. So that way it's much easier for you to track your ultimate progress. All right, step number 9, getting on a strength program. So if you're undersized or maybe you lack explosiveness, this is where ideally you want to create a routine for yourself, or just start to understand what it's going to truly take as far as the input of going to the gym. That consistency, that growth, that development, it's all going to be put into the gym. And a lot of players that are physically developed have put in a little bit more time, effort, or energy into the gym. And I don't want to hear that it's just genetics or this or that, because at the end of the day, the separators between good high school baseball players and great ones are those who just simply get after it in the gym a little bit more frequent. And those who dedicate a little bit more time are a little bit more disciplined. They have that consistency that they know and understand what it's going to take to get to that next level, or just to be the best player on their team. So it really comes down to just having that strength program that is baseball specific, so that way we're able to train with that much more intent. All right, step number 10, master your 5 tools. For those that don't know, hitting for average, power, speed, arm strength, and defense. So these are the 5 tools, but ideally it is also important to not only train specifically for those, but also train for that 6th tool, the untangibles, the intangibles, the baseball IQ, the understanding of where the ball goes in certain situations, defensive, situations, making sure that you understand cutoffs and relays, pickles, relays, like all that fun stuff. These are the things that ultimately college coaches love to see if you've already taken your game to that level, to understand bunt defense, right? First and third defense. These are all little things that go a long way if you produce the results out there on the field when it matters, and you're also playing in front of the right coach. So mastering these 5 skills are very important, especially for the game of baseball, and making sure also we have the understanding of what we're already good at. If we don't have that understanding of what we're good at, it's going to be very hard as far as a baseline to grow or to perfect what we're already good at, or to just simply chip away at the things that we're not so good at. So a quick little story: when I was at in between my, I think, junior or senior year, my mom signed me up for an SAT prep class. And in that SAT prep class, they basically asked me, first question, what are you good at? And I simply answered math, because math is obviously a very important area of aerospace engineering. I was definitely a math and science guy. And basically throughout my high school journey, I've always been a numbers guy. So when I was at that SAT prep class, they basically said, hey, we're trying to perfect what we're already good at. So I took that same mindset into baseball, and obviously I was already pretty solid with my glove, my defense, and ultimately we're just trying to perfect that at the end of the day. But it's not just about perfecting what we're good at, but it's also about chipping away at the other areas as well. So for example, for me, the first ever 60-yard dash that I ran was a 9.5 second 60 my freshman year, and I was able to get that down to like a 7.2 by the end of my senior year. So understanding that I was never the fastest guy, but I also tried to perfect my defense, obviously, because that was something that I was really, really solid at, but also with the intent of we're chipping away at my speed, and we're doing the consistent work through a sprinting program that was able to take me down from a 9.5 all the way down to a 7.2. All right, this next section is probably one of the most asked about inside my DMs, and it's ultimately, how do we build your exposure as a high school baseball player so that way you are able to get recruited? So step number 1, or step number 11 out of the 23 that we're going to be covering here today, is create a highlight video. And this is ultra valuable in the whole college recruiting process, because this highlight video gives these college coaches an understanding of what you can bring to the table. And honestly, you might not bring a lot. You also might bring a ton. This highlight video is probably one of the first steps in understanding what your abilities are if you look like a baseball player and what you're able to bring to the table. The best example that I can give you, because a lot of people ask me like, well, I don't have a lot of game film. How do we create this highlight video? Do we have to hire a production crew and all this fun stuff? No, you do not need a full functioning production team to create a highlight video. As long as you have your iPhone, you're going to be solid. Ultimately, these college coaches just want to see your son move around in the cage, throw a bullpen, run a 60-yard dash, maybe field some ground balls. That is it. Because a lot can be shown in these videos, and also a lot to be said by which video clips you are sending over to these college coaches. If you're sending over clips of you booting ground balls, these college coaches probably won't be interested in you. So it's really important that we create this highlight video, make it clean as far as edits. No music. You don't need to make this a highlight rap video. It's a highlight baseball video for college coaches. They don't need this crazy extra music or anything like that. Just show the reps that show your tools at the end of the day, the tools that we just mentioned as well. So next up, step number 12, build a player profile. So building a player profile doesn't necessarily mean a recruiting service that is halfway decent, and I think we all know what recruiting services I'm mentioning, but ideally, Perfect Game is a good one. Ideally, you would have to go to a showcase to get graded and to get all these metrics collected. But the same thing that can be applied for Perfect Game, we can create ourselves through a simple YouTube channel and some social media channels as well, because social media is being used by college coaches to get players recruited, whether you want to believe that or not. So this is where we have a database for these college coaches to understand some video clips, to understand some metrics, and the same thing that can be applied to Perfect Game can be applied to a YouTube channel if done correctly. All right, step number 13, start local. Guys, it doesn't make sense to start reaching out to the LSU and the Tennessees, even though that would be great if your skill level is at the caliber of those programs. But it is important to start locally in your backyard. For example, when I was going through the college recruiting process after my freshman year, one of the very first visits that I ever went on was to the United States Naval Academy. And the Naval Academy obviously is a really cool place. That's like the stepping stone. So the Naval Academy is really a solid place to be, and it's a really cool place to be because obviously college is paid for by the military, but also you have to serve 4 years at the end of graduation. So that's an actually like a reason why I didn't want to go to the Naval Academy, but that was one of the first places I went because it was in my backyard. I grew up most of my childhood between Maryland and Florida. At the time, my freshman year, I went to Severna Park High School, which is really close to Annapolis. So obviously that was one of the first places that I went, and ultimately it turned out to be a really awesome visit. I built a really solid connection with that coach, but ultimately it just wasn't necessarily a fit for me. Not saying that I was ready to necessarily land a scholarship that day. It was just my freshman year, so there was definitely a lot of time for my overall development to take place. Next up, step number 14, we have to understand what the calendar even looks like. No important dates as far as NCAA regulations, as far as when college coaches can communicate with us. On that note, it is very important that we understand what these rules actually mean for us, not just these college coaches. So these college coaches need to understand what these rules are, because that's when they can communicate with us. But at the end of the day, we have the ability to reach out to them whenever we want. Technically, if I was in first grade, I could send over an email to LSU's head coach if I really wanted to, but that might be a little bit too early, right? So that's where we really need to understand the calendar and then set proper expectations as far as what's to come. So we have to understand also dead periods, quiet periods, and ultimately when these college coaches can talk to us, aka August 1st of our junior year. So you need to know this, so that way we can set proper expectations. Next up, step number 15, do not rely on showcases or tournaments or camps alone. So these are all evaluation events, and these showcases can 100% help you out in getting noticed, but it's not the ultimate number one route to get this interest or get to this exposure from these college coaches. So yes, they can 100% help, but they are incredibly expensive. Speaking from experience, sometimes, my family invested not only the time, effort, energy, but also money to be able to go to a showcase. I remember in Greensboro, North Carolina, and they promised about 30 college coaches in attendance and only 2 showed up. So obviously I want you guys to be able to learn from my scars, not necessarily creating your own and learning from those. So this is the area where showcases can be a little bit of a money grab. College camps can be a little bit of a money grab if you go to the wrong ones. That's where it's also really important to have a select few on a short list that you're considering, but ultimately making sure that you are getting what you want out of these evaluation events. At the end of the day, they are evaluation events to get evaluated. It is not exposure events or interest events. These things can be done through a simple email to these college coaches. And quick reminder before we get into our next section, down below in the description, you can download my free email template, which I use for all of my students inside my Mendoza Baseball Academy. So that way you have the right formatting to reach out to these college coaches the right way. It's a super easy plug and play template. So again, that link's going to be waiting for you down below in the description. So next section, this is when we really want to be building relationships with these college coaches. And this first step, like I just mentioned, is to craft an email. And the easiest part is I've already done this for you. So you don't really even have to craft that email, but it is important to make sure that you craft it in your specific way in inputting your metrics, your numbers, etc. So I've already done the legwork for you. You can go ahead, like I already mentioned, go down below in the description. That link's going to be waiting for you as far as making sure that we craft that great email. Make sure that just the biggest note that I have for you guys is just make sure that every single one of these emails is personalized to these college coaches. No generic copy and paste emails, because if you're shortcutting emailing college coaches the wrong way, you're probably going to shortcut your development and who you are as a baseball player. It really just speaks much louder than anything on who you are as a person. So we want to make sure that each and every one gets personalized. And of course, we include links to a perfect game or a highlight video. That way we are able to track clicks if done properly as far as utilizing my outreach system and strategies inside my Mendoza Baseball Academy's triple play. So again, if that interests you, you can also go down below in the description to book a call with me. We can talk about that and if we're even a good fit for each other. So step number 17, be consistent with the follow-up. So once we send out these emails, just one email just simply won't cut it. We have to show that perseverance, that we're emailing this college coach multiple times, giving them updates, because this is where ultimately we make sure that we're never going to be off of this college coach's radar. So stay on their radar without being annoying. So that's where the proper cadence is really important. And that's something that I also help my students inside my academy with, is making sure that we're not getting to the point where we're annoying these college coaches. Because if we're ever annoying them, more than likely, we're not going to land a college commitment from that specific coach or university. All right, step number 18, know what to say on the phone. So let's just play this out. It's your junior year, it's past August 1st, and a college coach hits you up and says, hey, Evan, I just wanted to reach out. It's Mike Martin from Florida State or whatever. Just wanted to see what's been going on with you. Do you have any updates for me? I just wanted to be able to reach out to you since now we can. Are you going to sound, that's not going to really sound super confident if you don't know what to say or how to have that conversation with these college coaches. So that's where it's really critical to have a game plan or have a script or somewhat questions, or even possibly even a list of questions. So that way, when you reach out to these college coaches and they reach back out to you, maybe through a phone call or through a Zoom call, you know how to have a conversation. You know what the right questions are when you speak to these college coaches. So that's a huge one, guys. You don't want to necessarily sound like you've never played baseball before, because these are the things also that college coaches want to get a feel for if you're able to talk the game of baseball. And baseball, just like Arabic and Japanese and speaking Indian or speaking Portuguese or Spanish, these are different languages. English, right? These are all different languages. Well, guess what? Baseball has its own language as well, and you can either prove to these college coaches that you don't know how to talk the game of baseball, or you can prove to these college coaches, yeah, I know how to talk about spin rate, and if he's a vertical guy or maybe a sinker guy, like I know what horizontal induced and vertical induced is. These are all things that, like, obviously being a pro for 7 years, I've heard these terminologies more than once, obviously in a scouting report. So it's really important that you showcase to these college coaches, you actually know what those things mean, and you know what you're able to bring to the table when all things said and done. All right, step number 19, we're almost there, guys. Visit some campuses and introduce yourself. So this is where, yes, you can ultimately take the initiative to visit some camps, introduce yourself to some of these college coaches, maybe knock on their office door in a sense. More than likely in the summertime, they're not necessarily going to be there, but it is important also to introduce yourself maybe at college camps or maybe in, before a game, if you can find a quick second without being bothersome to these coaches. At the end of the day, if you're trying to say hi before one of their games, they're trying to win a game, so be respectful in that manner. It is important to visit some of these college campuses. So just number one, you get a feel for what campus you even like. If you like a certain part of the country, or if you want to get away from home, these are all things that you have to take into account when you visit these campuses. Also, you have to see what kind of facilities these baseball programs are able to offer you. Yes, you have some leverage in this whole process as well. We need to make sure that we never forget that. If these college programs do not offer you the facilities to grow and nurture your development, maybe they're not going to be necessarily the right fit for you. So it's really important, guys, when you visit these college campuses, you have to really understand what kind of facilities they are able to provide you in the long term. All right, step number 20. We want to be coachable and humble at the same time. So your attitude is a direct correlation of your resume, your baseball resume, the coaches that you've been coached by, the programs you've played for. Honestly, we need to make sure that we have a good attitude about our game. Our attitude about the recruiting process is no different. We ultimately want to make sure that we're producing positive thoughts to these college coaches when we're communicating with them. And if we have any doubt in their mind that we might not necessarily have the best attitude, or we might not necessarily be super coachable in the whole process, that's where ideally it's a huge red flag for these college coaches. And at the end of the day, word gets around. So you don't want to be the guy that's throwing his helmet, throwing his bats, being a bad teammate, or maybe even arguing with an umpire, because these things stick to your resume. And again, your resume is everything. All right, last but not least, the last section of this video, and I'm happy that you guys have made it this far, play the long game. And I can't stress this enough, because a lot of people jump to the first college offer that they receive, and that's not the right way to go about it. So step number 21, keep getting better. Development does not stop when these emails go out. It never means that we put our development on pause. Development will always continuously happen. It doesn't matter what your name is, whether your name is Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, it does not simply matter. You are always trying to be that growth mindset that we talked about in section number 1. We are always trying to get better. So that development, even though we're sending out emails to these college coaches and we feel like we might have the opportunity to play college baseball, our development will always take priority. So that's where it's really important that we keep that mindset to always get better. So next up, be open to different paths. Obviously, D1 isn't the only route that you can take in the whole college recruiting process. There's D2, there's D3, there's JUCO, there's NAIA, there's other routes. So it's really important that we have that open-mindedness to understand if it's not D1, who cares? We still get a college education. We can go the D2 route. We could possibly level up our skills and develop and play at a D1 program our next year. So it's not the most important thing to go D1. But of course, I do believe in having ridiculously high goals, but also having that understanding that if we don't reach those stars, we're still going to land on the clouds. So playing college baseball is still pretty cool, and you should be very fortunate to be able to play baseball at that next level. And sometimes, to be honest with you guys, going the JUCO route, I've heard great stories as far as being a JUCO bandit and just having a great team camaraderie of just grinding and developing your skills. I've heard it's sometimes a really great place to be, but sometimes it's just not necessarily the right fit for everyone. So that's where it's really important just to make sure that you do your research. Obviously not from me because I didn't go the JUCO route, but I've heard a lot of stories, obviously, throughout my professional career. There's plenty of guys that go the JUCO route that ultimately do get drafted. So don't feel like you're going JUCO. You don't have the opportunity to play pro ball because you simply do. All right, last but not least, step number 23, have fun with it, guys. Don't let the pressure of college coaches attending your game kill the fun of playing this beautiful game. And that's something that honestly was probably one of the bigger mistakes that I made in the high school recruiting process was whenever I saw a bucket hat with a clipboard and a backpack, I always kind of knew that it was a college coach or a pro scout watching our games and not necessarily coming out to my game specifically to watch me because my team had some, other studs on it as well, but it killed my fun for the game. I was always playing for them rather than playing for me. And that's where it's really important to understand your why. Why am I even playing this game? What are my dreams? What are my goals? What is my path going to look like? These are all things that ultimately, if you have that understanding, it's really important that we keep that in place. And ultimately, you also play your best when you love the game and you're not thinking about this other stuff because the pressure is not there of a college coach is in attendance. We have to be, dialed in. Just love the game, have fun. And since you guys have made it this far, I'm going to give you a bonus tip. Bonus tip number 24. Guys, this is critical, guys, especially with what I just mentioned. If a college coach is in attendance, you feel that pressure, always shift that pressure into, is my teammate going to perform? If you care more about your teammate performing than your own performance, I guarantee you guys, your performance is going to be pretty solid. You might go 2 for 4 with a double and a walk or something like that. And your teammate, he might go 1 for 4, 2 for 4, 3 for 4. You can be excited, obviously. This happened to me in one specific game where I'll never forget. I had a teammate that was learning the language of English for the first time. He was a transfer student from Venezuela, and I really took care of him in this one specific game. And I could care less on what my performance was. I just wanted to make sure that he felt comfortable to understand our defensive strategies. He was also the second baseman. I was a shortstop. So I just wanted to make sure that he felt okay. And by doing that, I actually had a really killer game, and I didn't even recognize it because I was too worried, honestly, about my teammate, and that was a good thing. So sometimes if we feel this pressure that we need to perform, shift that pressure in a way that we're caring more about one of our teammates and making sure that they are producing. And ultimately that makes us enjoy the game and have fun at the end of the day. This whole recruiting journey is not a simple 1 week fix. It's a long game and a lot of players give up way too early. But if you stick to these 23 and if you made it this far, 24 steps, I promise you, you'll get a real shot at the next level. And as a friendly reminder, down below in the description, there's going to be a couple of resources for you. Obviously that free email template as far as a simple plug and play template to reach out to these college coaches. You can also go down below in the description to book a call with me if you feel like your player is ready to play at the next level and also work one-on-one with me inside my remote training program. And if you're interested on what the triple play even is, go ahead and watch this full video on your screen right now, which details my triple play with the physical development, mental development, and recruiting strategy. I basically give away everything that I teach my students in my academy for free. And I also go through the same exact recruiting strategy that led me to multiple D1 offers. So make sure to watch this full video on your screen right now, and I'll see you on the other side.